Hey everyone! Before we jump into this creepy story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you love hearing chilling tales. I've got a really unsettling one for you today, so make yourself comfortable, if you can. This story is about a creepy experience I had that I still can't shake, and it's only gotten more disturbing as time's gone by. Let's dive in. I was never someone who believed in the supernatural. Ghosts, spirits, cursed objects. It all felt like stuff out of horror movies, not real life. So when I moved into that old apartment downtown, I didn't pay much attention to its creepy quirks. It was cheap, close to work, and had character, as they say. But in hindsight, maybe I should have listened to that gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. The building was one of those old-school brownstones from the early 1900s, with these narrow hallways and doors that never fully closed. There was always a draft, always a soft, persistent creak in the floors. And, this is the part that really got to me, a massive antique mirror mounted on the wall across from my bed. It was tall, with this ornate gold frame that was a little too fancy for the apartment's shabby feel. But apparently it had been there as long as anyone could remember. It wasn't mine, and it didn't bother me at first, so I ignored it. That was a mistake. The first few weeks were quiet enough. I got used to the quirks of the place, how the pipes would groan in the middle of the night, or how I'd sometimes hear footsteps in the apartment above me, even when I knew it was empty. I just chalked it up to living in an old building, and honestly, I didn't even pay much attention to the mirror. I hardly looked into it, especially at night. Something about seeing my reflection in that dark, silent room just felt off. But things started getting weird when I began noticing subtle changes. At first, it was small stuff, things you could easily write off as your imagination. I'd see my reflection in the mirror, but it just didn't seem quite right, like my face looked a little off, or I'd catch a flicker of movement that shouldn't have been there. You ever get that feeling when you're alone, but it's like someone's watching you? That's what it felt like. Only in my case, it was like the someone watching me was me, or at least something that looked like me. One night I was lying in bed, just about to drift off, when I heard this soft tapping sound, like fingernails on glass. I sat up, groggy, but I couldn't see anything in the dark. It was quiet, and for a second I thought I'd imagined it. But then I heard it again. Tap, 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 slow and rhythmic, coming from the direction of the mirror. I tried to shake it off, convinced it was just the building settling, or maybe something outside. But as I lay there, I couldn't shake this creeping sense of dread. My eyes kept drifting back to the mirror, and though the room was pitch black, the mirror seemed to almost glow, not in a warm, comforting way, but in a cold, ghostly way, like a spotlight on something you'd rather not see. I remember feeling my pulse race, my skin prickling with goosebumps. I told myself I was being paranoid, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. I tried to ignore it, closing my eyes and willing myself to sleep. But sleep didn't come. A few days later, it got worse. I started having these dreams. No, more like nightmares. In them, I was always standing in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, which stared back with a strange, knowing smile. Sometimes in the dream, I'd raise my hand to touch the mirror, and my reflection wouldn't move. It would just stay there, watching me. Then, just as I'd realize it wasn't moving in sync with me, it would slowly lift its hand, like it was reaching out to grab me, to pull me through the glass. I'd wake up in a cold sweat every time, my heart pounding. Eventually, I started avoiding the mirror. I'd brush my teeth with my back to it, and when I'd change, I'd turn the lights off so I couldn't see my reflection. It sounds silly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Whatever was in that mirror wasn't really me. Things reached a breaking point one night about a month after I moved in. I was up late finishing some work on my laptop when the room got cold. I'm talking bitterly cold, like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in an instant. My breath came out in small puffs, and I could see frost forming on the windows. And then I heard it again, that soft, persistent tapping. But this time it wasn't coming from the mirror. It was coming from inside the mirror. I turned, slowly, my skin crawling. The mirror was pitch black, like a dark pool of ink, and there was a shadowy figure on the other side, pressed up against the glass. I could see its face, or at least something like a face. Its eyes were hollow, empty, and its mouth was twisted into this unnatural grin, stretching wider than any human mouth should be able to. And then, in a voice that sounded like nails scraping across metal, it whispered my name. I froze, too terrified to move. I knew I had to get out of there, but I couldn't bring myself to look away from the mirror. It felt like if I moved, if I even blinked, that thing in the mirror would step through the glass and pull me in. Finally, mustering every bit of courage I had, I broke eye contact, grabbed my keys, and bolted out of the apartment. I didn't go back that night. In fact, I didn't go back for a while. I stayed with a friend, making up excuses for why I couldn't go home. But eventually, I had to return. I couldn't just abandon my place, no matter how terrifying it was. When I finally went back, the mirror was gone. My landlord claimed he didn't know what I was talking about, that there'd never been a mirror on that wall in the first place. But I know what I saw, and sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear that soft, relentless tapping coming from somewhere close.